Hi everybody, how you doing? I am Johan. That is Charleston.
Hi.
Hi. Joining us on today's Better with Age, we have the Honourable Everett Hindley joining us from Swift Current, Saskatchewan. The Honourable Everett. What do we call you, Everett? I don't know if we call you Your Honor, the Honourable, Mr. Hindley.
You gotta say it with a different demeanor. The Honourable.
Hey, I was going to stop you, but I kind of like that. Could you pre-record that somehow so I could use that for almost like a walk-on?
The Honourable Mr. Everett Hindley will be able to say
the Honourable Everett Hindley.
Yeah, there you go. Charleston's got the nice deep voice.
He can pull it off. There we go.
Yeah. Your title, Everett, is the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, and we really appreciate you coming on the show today. Obviously, we were just talking previous about how, over the last how many years, mental health has become more of a focal point for a lot of people, especially here in Saskatchewan, and is one of those subjects that not a lot of people talk about. One of the things that Charleston, he's kind of the booking agent for our show, and he's like, okay, I'm going to get the minister on to be able to do that. And he pulls it off. I don't know how he gets half the people on our show, but he pulls it off. I think he nags you enough.
I had to threaten him and say, if you don't come on the show, I'm going to stand out in front on the front lawn, butt naked in front of the whole entire place.
Legislature. Yeah. Well, you're going to scare him into it. But Everett, thank you for joining us today. I know it looks like you're in Swift Current. You join us from Swift Current today?
Yeah, you betcha. At the office in beautiful downtown Swift Current. It's a nice Friday afternoon. Little windy here, but what else is new in Swift Current, right? So, no, thanks, guys, Johan and Charleston, for having me on. Honestly, when the invitation came through and the email came through, it was an automatic yes. So there was no begging or threatening required, Charleston. But had you done that, I would have caved pretty quickly anyway. But I've checked out a little bit of of some of the videos and some of the work you've done and on this program. And man, you guys have had just an absolutely an impressive list of guests on so far. A-list guests today. And then you go to me, which is kind of it's like a B movie almost, but it's a B-rated movie.
No pressure.
But anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to be on today.
Yeah, no pressure, Everett. But thank you again. We do want to be able to bring up the subject of mental health and addictions, and we feel that it is very, very important. So, but first, before we get into some of that, I want to know
I knew he was going to ask this too.
First, I want to know about how the hell does the guy, because I think you're roughly around, I saw in your bio that you graduated from the Broadcast Academy in Saskatoon around 1995, right?
Right. Yeah.
I was going to university in 1996 in Saskatoon. Louis, we were at Sammy's, we were at, Riley's, we were at, probably crossed paths a few times, Charleston, in some of the different bars back in the day.
I think I was in the 6th grade at that time.
Yeah, I know. Thanks for bringing that up. But Everett, how does a guy that gets into broadcasting get into, was in Swift Current, you got into broadcasting in Swift Current, you were the color guy for the Swift Current Broncos, your team right behind you right there. How does a guy like that then all of a sudden put 20 years and become the Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Addictions? Tell us a little bit about your path and how you got to where you are today.
I have no idea how this has happened. Yeah. I just... No, it's life is weird. How things transpire. So here's my story. I actually was born and raised up in northeast Saskatchewan. I grew up on a farm near Melfort, and so that's where I went to school. And mom and dad still have the farm up there. And every once in a while, of course, not lately, haven't been able to, but try to get it back to home. And I'm pretty far removed from the farm nowadays. I wouldn't be able to run a tractor. I think I'd need a refresher course to do it. But I'd always had an interest in broadcasting, and I think that probably started on the farm because I spent a lot of time driving around a tractor. And what do? You listen to the radio, right? And a lot of hockey games on the radio and football games, of course, a little bit of baseball, and so kind of got the broadcasting bug when I was a kid, and graduated from the high school in Melfort in 1994. So Johan, you and I are pretty close to the same age, maybe a couple of years difference or so.
Yep.
And after that, kind of had some interest in journalism, and ended up going to the Western Academy Broadcasting School in Saskatoon, and took some classes there. Actually did an internship in Prince Albert at CKVI Radio there, shadowed some of the reporters in the newsroom, and got my first kind of crack at it there. But the first place that offered me an opportunity to work in broadcasting was in Swift Current. So they've got a couple of radio stations, now 3 down here. And they were looking for a weekend news reporter and some guy to kind of fill in all the shifts. And I was 19. I just turned 20, I think, when I moved down to Swift Current, and was, like it is when you're that age, you take whatever you can get. And I was pretty fortunate. I had the opportunity to do a bunch of different roles here at their local radio station. So I started doing weekend news and reporting, and then eventually, due to some staff changes, people moving on, I got the opportunity to do morning news and co-host some of the morning shows. And then, of course, as you mentioned, did some color commentary for the Swift Current Broncos, and that was a ton of fun. And then, how did I get into politics? So here's the weird thing: in the community of Swift Current, you get to know a lot of people. It's not a big city, and one of the fellows that I had connected with happened to work at City Hall. He was the director of business development for the city of Swift Current, and kind of their media relations guy. So when, as a reporter and as the news director, when I was doing stories on civic politics and all that sort of stuff, I had to reach out to him. That guy's name was Brad Wall.
Kind of famous guy, a little bit, yeah.
Who is that?
Back in the day.
Hold on, wait. Who is that?
Brad Wall. Brad Wall was a former premier. He's known, especially in Swift Current. He is. I think he did Scott Moe's doing a fantastic job. But Brad Wall put Saskatchewan. He's just a great leader, a great man, a good Saskatchewan guy. I don't want to get too much into politics.
Just a former premier.
A former. But he's
well,
kind
not
of
just a former premier, but a
big wig. And he drives some of the nicest cars in Swift Current. I've seen some of his shots on his social media pages. He's got these old, classic cars, and people do that. Just a good dude.
He does.
Yeah,
you bet. So I got to meet Brad through that, and then a little bit later on, he actually ran to be the MLA for Swift Current. Won the election in 1999. I was still working at the radio station at this point in time, but I'd always had an interest in politics as a reporter, and were some of my most favorite stories to cover from a news perspective. Anyways, he approached me, and we had a bit of a friendship going on, and he had approached me after he had become elected as the MLA in 99, and asked me if I would join him and run his MLA office in Swift Current. And I kind of hummed and hawed and thought about it, and then decided to make the jump from broadcasting into politics. So I worked as a staffer running his MLA office here in Swift Current for a number of years. He became a leader of the party, and then eventually became premier. And I worked as his executive assistant. So I had traveled along with him, and we did all the drives back and forth from Swift Current to Regina and all over the place on a regular basis. And joined him on a number of trade missions and things that he did when he was premier. Anyway, when he decided to retire from politics that would have been summer of 2017, kind of had a chat with my wife and thought, I've been at this for a while from the other end of it as a political staffer, and decided to run for the nomination, a contested nomination for the Saskatchewan Party, and I was fortunate there, and then fortunate to have the opportunity to win in a by-election here in 2018, and then got reelected here this past fall. So it all started from just happening to move down to Swift Current for a radio gig, and look what happens, right? It's funny how life.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy how you can go to school for one thing and then just completely just end up in a whole different industry, and you never end up in what you went to school for.
and it's funny because people will ask me, they say, "Well, you must have a poli-sci degree, or did you?" Nope. So I just kind of the school of hard knocks when it comes to politics, but
but when it comes to politics, though, you're still checking a box, though, because broadcasting and politics, you still have to have that way of communicating, way of words, way of speaking, like way of engaging in the public eye.
For sure.
It's kind of the same.
Yeah, you betcha. Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. A large part of politics is communicating, because you're communicating with people, with the constituents that you represent. You're hearing from them. You take that back, because that's what you are, right? You're, as a politician, at least that's what you should be, in my view. You should be reflective of the people that elected you, and represent their views and the questions and concerns that they have. And I've just been fortunate to have that support from the community of Swift Current. But yeah, that's how I ended up here.
All I know is that, you look at the footpaths that you're taking, that you're leading the way for some of these people. But like Derek Myers, now, he went from Global Sports. He's now in office. You're looking at, man, who's next? Darren DuPont is going to be, the next, maybe Premier of Saskatchewan, but you never know. Rod Peterson, you never know. But that's fantastic.
Who knows me?
Yeah, you never know. Charleston Hughes is going to be running.
So we got Gene Mikowski elected. He's the Minister of Advanced Education right now. So there you go.
And Gene Mikowski and I went to U of S. And you took the shyest guy who probably said 6 words to all his teammates at U of S to be able to do that back in the day. And who didn't like the cameras playing football, didn't speak much at all. Nobody ever says that Gino is very talkative. And now look at him. He's out there getting selfies. He's out there speaking all the time, shaking hands and kissing babies. So it must be something about the political office that you guys like. So good for you. Congrats. So now...
You know what? Speaking of Gene, here's a funny story, and this is back when Brad was the premier. But we were actually door knocking, I think, campaigning for Gene that first time that he ran. So we were in Regina, and typically, when the premier's going around campaigning, that's who people want to talk to, right? Not when you're campaigning with Gene Mikowski. They kind of pushed Brad to the side and said, you know what, Gene, I got a Rider jersey in the back. Can you just hang on a second? Yeah, I'll vote for you, but can you sign this, please?
Yeah. So. I know how that feels, Everett, because every time we go out, there's no Johan there. It's all Charleston. So I get that so I understand that feeling. So let's talk a little bit about, so what I want to know then is, does Scott Moe not like you?
I'm pretty sure he does.
I'm trying to, or maybe I want to know the story behind this. Either Scott Moe doesn't like you or something happened, but how the heck do you get put into the most challenging position I think there's out there in the cabinet, out there today?
Yeah, especially now. It's pretty challenging right now.
Did you apply for this position for Minister of Mental Health and Addictions during a pandemic? I got to think that either Scott Moe didn't like you, or you wanted or that you said, I'll take the toughest job in Parliament. I'm going to go for it and do that, because obviously, outside of the pandemic, this has got some serious issues that's like we talked about before that's coming up. But now you throw in a pandemic. Why would you take on this role? What made you want to be able to take it on and take on this role?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I hope the premier likes me. I think so too. Yeah. but no, it's interesting. Like I said, I'm pretty fortunate to be in this position. It's not a position that I applied for per se. The premier will, after an election, the premier will have in his mind or her mind, who they think might be a good fit for whatever particular portfolio it is, and you know what? It's like being an athlete on the bench. If the coach calls you into play, whatever position it is, you want to do it, right?
You got to figure it out.
Exactly, right. And so when I received the call, I've been happy to do whatever I'm asked to do. I was first elected in March of 2018 in a by-election, and was more than happy to serve as the MLA for Swift Current, which I continue to do. For a period of time there, I was appointed as the Legislative Secretary for Trade and Export Development, so I helped out the minister on that file. And then shortly after that, I was appointed as the government whip. But when I got the call, it was interesting because before the last election, we actually had kind of the health portfolio split up into 2 sections. So there was a Minister of Health, and then there was also a Minister of Rural and Remote Health and Seniors. And what Premier Moe did is he also added on the mental health and addictions piece to that second part. So I get the chance to be the first official minister responsible for mental health and addictions, as well as being the minister for rural and remote health and seniors in this province. And you're right. And I'm fortunate I get a chance to serve alongside Paul Merriman, who's the new Minister of Health, and he's an absolutely great guy. And the two of us kind of tag team on the file. But it's busy. Health is the biggest expanse and the biggest portfolio in all of government. So it's a busy file at the best of times, let alone you throw in a pandemic and then all of the increasing pressures when it comes to mental health and addictions as well. And you take it one step at a time, and you have to be realistic about it too. These are pretty serious topics that we're dealing with, and we're trying to do as much as we can to support people where we can, while still talking to the community and hearing from them about what the priorities are. But I've been enjoying it. I tell you, there's some challenging days, of course, like any job, right? There's some challenging days, but there's some really, really good days where you can be happy that in whatever very small role, perhaps you've made a difference in someone's life, and that's what makes it worth doing.
What in the world is WHIP? You are the governor or WHIP?
Yeah,
you got to think. You got to excuse me because I'm American, man. So we don't have these kind of terms, and I got to be informed about all the terms that are being used right now. So the governor or WHIP.
Yeah, I was the government whip, so it sounds a lot cooler than it is. There is no actual physical whip, but essentially what the whip does is it's one of the MLAs, and the government side has a whip, and as does the opposition side. They also have a whip, but that individual is responsible for knowing where the MLAs are, what they're doing, making sure that they're when the legislature's sitting, that they're in the chamber for important votes. They need to make sure that everybody's where they're supposed to be, that people are speaking when they're supposed to be speaking, and kind of really, honestly, Charleston, probably the best description of it is the cat herder. They got to try and herd the cats.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you sound like you just herding everybody, whipping everybody into shape.
Yeah, it's a role that's challenging is probably the best way.
I would say, what happens if you're in touch with a knucklehead and it's like, come on, man, you're still not here. You're late again. Can you hurry up and get here? Like, do you ever run into that situation?
Politicians, knuckleheads, never have I heard something like that.
I think politicians late, never. Right?
So Everett, let's you take on this role. You're now a Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, as well as your other role. What's been the biggest challenge, or what has surprised you the most, I guess, about this role and what you're seeing here in Saskatchewan? That is one of the things that's not probably talked about enough. Or what are you seeing right now to be able to do something to make a difference?
Especially in Saskatchewan, because when I first came here, like in 2018, and I used to coach like football, kids in football, train kids all the time, and I helped out in the multiple football programs around here. And every single program that I've been, in touch with has a kid who either committed suicide, going through mental health issues. And it's like every single football program. And it's like a real common thing around here in Saskatchewan for some reason, where people are going through a lot of mental health issues. And, whether it's just simple anxiety or whether it's big things where they're really having some serious problems and need help, need someone to talk to. But I haven't seen it. No, when I was in Calgary for 10 years, I haven't seen it nowhere as bad as when I've been here in Saskatchewan. It's like, holy, and I've noticed it like over the last 3 years.
And we just talked about, previous to jumping on the show, Everett, we were talking about the U of S football player that you mentioned. There's a year coming up on a year anniversary. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing and how you're looking to be able to make a difference and how it's going so far.
Yeah, you bet. And just on that point there, Johan, the case that you're referring to is Samuel Uko, and a very, very tragic case where he took his own life. And there's been some investigations done into what's happened there. A coroner's inquest will be taking place, trying to make some improvements to make sure that a situation like that doesn't happen again. And as you mentioned, it was just last week we marked the 1 year anniversary since that tragic passing. I think on behalf of the government and as the minister, I've extended my condolences, and I extend my condolences to the family. And to Charleston's point, the interesting thing about this particular portfolio and the challenge it is mental health and addictions is it's so different and varied based on the community and the area. Like you said, you perhaps notice it's different here in Saskatchewan than in other areas. And it's one of those ones where it's not as simple as being able to fix a broken bone, right? Where you break your bone, you go to the ER, they take an x-ray, they see what's wrong, and throw in a cast. You go through physio and rehab and all stuff, and you're good to go. Mental health and addictions is so unique, and depending on it really knows no boundaries, right? Like it affects people across the province, whether they're in. And I'm just speaking about Saskatchewan, and this is definitely this is a challenge in all of our provinces in the United States, across the globe, and it just happens to be a little bit different everywhere. But it affects people whether you live in the urban centers, Regina or Saskatoon, or the smaller urban centers such as Swift Current and Yorkton, North Battleford, and Prince Albert. It's an issue in rural areas. It's an issue on First Nations communities in the far north where they might be remote, and that's part of it, right? You might have greater access to services in the major centers just because of population, right? In Regina and Saskatoon, but it doesn't mean that because you perhaps live in a small town in rural Saskatchewan, or you're living in a northern remote First Nation, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to access services. So you have to find different ways to try and do that. And I think that's, again, probably the most challenging thing. I said to some folks this morning, I was having a meeting with how, and Johan and Charleston, you could probably speak this a little bit as well, but particularly Johan, the stresses that, and I'll just speak about kids for an example, that kids and teenagers face nowadays are completely different than when, Johan and I went to school. We didn't have cell phones back then, or Facebook and social media, and there was no such thing as, online bullying and all these other sorts of things. And I just know, and I've got a couple of kids who are growing now, and I know some of the challenges they faced as kids when they were growing up and going to high school, but again, completely different than somebody else in another part of the province might face. So that's probably the most significant part of it, is trying to find unique and different ways to provide as much broad-based support to people as they can, regardless of where they live, and trying to do that on a timely basis so people don't feel alone. And just to go back to what we just originally started talking about talking about it. And I think it's gotten better in recent years. We, as an example, the Bell Let's Talk Day at the end of January we didn't have that, a number of years ago. And now it's a nationwide event that takes place, and an initiative. And so it's getting, I think, a little bit better that people are starting to talk about it more, and not being afraid to admit that you might need some help, and not just talking to your friends and family, and that's an outstanding starting point. But for some folks, you have to actually go a step further and access professional services, and that's what's most important, is to make sure that people know that they're not alone, and they need to be willing to talk to people about it and to seek out those supports when they need it.
Yeah, you talked about so many different points there about how times have changed. We all talk about back in the day, we walked uphill to school without our shoes, uphill both ways, snowing, blah, 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 and all that. But things are definitely different. My boys, one's 18, one's 15, you see the pressures that they're under, and how, we say, well, back in my day, we used to just play outside, and, and we just to be physical. But how did the pandemic change all that? How is it, changed it now with the fact that you've and to that point, how are you going to be able to fix this for years to come? Because the pandemic has really, I think, messed with so many people that it's going to be a problem for years, because you've basically isolated now this issue. If they had mental issues before, you've now told them to stay indoors, away from people. I mean, yes, they have the access of computers and phones and everything like that, but now you're dealing with something where it's almost like caging a wild animal, and then you're saying, okay, release them after. There's going to be so many different issues now after when we get back to quote, quote, normal. how are you prepared for that, or what are the steps that you're looking to be able to take on that challenge of the mental health after COVID?
Yeah, and that's an excellent question, and I don't think anybody really has the solution. As government, we're trying to do what we can and make sure that we're investing where we can in programs and services. And I'm just speaking about the provincial government. There's the federal government and municipalities, local cities, mayors and city councilors and town councilors have there's some involvement there as well. Our First Nations leadership across this province that are involved, and it really does take a community effort to be able to tackle this. And COVID has had such a profound impact on each and every one of us in our lives. Just not being able to be together because of the safety restrictions that had to be put in place. As an example, just a couple of weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, we eased. I did a press conference where we eased some of the visitation restrictions to long-term care homes for senior citizens in this province. And then we had to tweak it a little bit because it wasn't working quite as well as perhaps as we thought. And so about a week or so ago, we eased the restrictions a little bit further, and we'll see that start to take effect on May 30th, and then some further easing of restrictions on the 20th of June. But I think what it's done is it's not only made things more challenging, I think, for people who had mental health challenges prior to COVID. It's made it that much worse. And I just point to as an example here in my home community, and there's a number of these around the province, but we have a mental health walk-in clinic that opened its doors about 2 years ago, just before COVID hit. And because of COVID, the walk-in mental health clinic has now had to do basically a lot of stuff by phone and virtual like this, right?
Yeah.
And that does help to a certain degree, but it also does it doesn't replace face-to-face contact. And and I think as we come out of this, and I'm hopeful that we're able to do so fairly quickly here as we get people, get vaccines out and start to build up some immunity. But there, it's been a year and a half almost of all of us, putting masks on when we go into public places, and capacity limits in restaurants and stores and churches, and having to follow arrows in the floors and all that sort of stuff. And when we get back to normal, it's just not going to be as simple, I think, as just flipping a switch. And, in addition to the people who had pre-existing mental health challenges before all this, there's those that perhaps didn't have them and now do have some of these struggles. And I just think that it's going to be something we're going to have to monitor very carefully. We've put more money into mental health and addictions in this year's budget. We were at $435 million last year. We're up to $458 million this year. And we know it's not enough. We know we're still not hitting everybody, and there's still gaps. We're making some significant strides, but we still have some gaps to fill, and we're going to try our best to do that.
I know Charleston's just loaded up. He's got a bunch of questions he wants to get to.
I got so many questions. I'm about to fill you up.
Looks like it.
He's got the smoke going already when he's like that and do that. But we got to cut to a commercial break. But when we get back, I'm going to unleash Charleston on the questions about this because
mental health.
It is such a important subject, and there's so many questions we can get to about mental health and addiction. So,
because I got issues.
Yeah, well, we know your issues. We got lots of issues, but that's okay. But we'll get back to that right after this commercial break.
Hi, my name is Rob Peterson. I'm the broker owner of Realty One in Regina. Real estate and life is about great people, and that's why I'm associated with Charleston Hughes and Johan Zielinski and IKS to sponsor the Better with Age podcast. Realty One was founded in Regina 11 years ago. It's an independent brokerage, it's local, and it's full of great people helping great local Regina people buy and sell properties. It's entrepreneurial based, which means you have non-narcissistic agents that have your best interest in mind, not their own. In these coronavirus times, real estate market right now in Regina and Saskatchewan is thriving because people are thinking more local. They're not thinking about traveling because we can't, and that's driving our market. When you hire a realtor, no matter who it is, no matter what company, please interview them. Please make sure they're a good personal fit for you, because that's what this is all about. It's good people connecting themselves with someone that they know has their best interest in mind. And that's what the Realty One family does, and that's what a lot of agents in Regina do. but make sure you take your time and find the best fit for you and your family.
All right, and we're back here, joined today with well, you say the title because Charleston says it's so much better than me with his deep voice.
The Honourable Everett Hindley.
There you go. See, look at that.
And we're back.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It just sounds so more professional to be able to do that than me. Everett, before the break, we were talking a lot about mental health, and Charleston has had a friend that recently has gotten into mental health issues. And I know that Charleston wants to be able to ask some questions, to be able to help out some people that are looking for that health here in Saskatchewan. So I'm going to let Charleston just ask away and do that.
Yeah, just because I've had a friend, recently who's going through a lot of, mental health issues, almost to the point of where it's kind of psychotic at times. And, he's been looking for help for a while, and I kind of took him into my home, and he's been in my home, and it's just not been a good moment for him, I guess you can say. So it came down to a point where we had to send him off to get help and to find help. And he's been in touch with programs out there like Coast and Coast for Mental Health and other programs like that. And I guess now at this moment, he's been in there for about, I would say, a week or so, and he's being cast back out into the public. And in my eyes, I think it shouldn't be cast back out into the public, because right now he has nowhere to go. So I end up having to take him back into my home. I mean, I'm not a professional. I can't do much for somebody like that. So I'm just thinking in terms of all I can do is just be the best supporter that I can be. So, I mean, what do I do in a scenario like this? How can I find better help for him? How can I find, a better living situation for him? I wouldn't even say like an old folks home, or I wouldn't want to just put him into like a mental institution where he can go live, and treat him like, he's that kind of person, like he has mental health issues, because, he's still a good guy and he's a buddy of mine, and he's still a sane person when you think about it. He's just on the edge, I guess you can say.
Yeah, it's a great point, Charleston. And you know what, that is one of the things that we're trying to improve, is to make sure that it's easier for people to access the help that they need, because I think it's, it's great that governments and any level of government and organizations can be out there providing supports, but if people don't know about them, or they have trouble accessing them, that's, then that's obviously a roadblock that we've got to get out of the way. We often tell folks that there's a number of avenues that they can reach out to, just as a starting point. 811 is always a great service to start with any sort of health-related question or query or concern that the individual in Saskatchewan might have, and from there they can help direct you in the right area. A number of communities across this province, cities and towns around Saskatchewan have supports that they offer. I talked in our previous segment as an example of some of the mental health walk-in clinics. Some of these are fairly new, that have been established just in the last couple of years or so. So that provides an additional outlet to people. We've invested into what we call community recovery teams as well, which is a little bit of a different model in mental health. Typically, the way we've handled it in the past is, an individual seeks out some mental health supports from a professional through the government, and you end up having to book an appointment and go to a government building and visit there and have your appointment. And that can be daunting for some people, particularly those that might be struggling with mental health, because there is that stigma of, what is, in the small community, and really no community in Saskatchewan is that big, even Regina and Saskatoon. Some people think, well, what if my neighbor sees me walking into that place? Then they think, oh, that guy must be one. What's going on with Everett, right? What's he doing there?
Yeah.
So the community recovery teams actually come out.
Yeah, it's kind of been the same way with him,
exactly.
because he's a normal guy all the way up until kind of recently, and then things just start, going out of whack.
Yeah. Yeah, the community recovery team model, they come out and they can do home visits. So instead of you going to the government office to have an appointment and have an assessment, they come to you and and deal with it wherever you're most comfortable. The other part of this is, and we have this challenge on the addiction side as well, and this is where we're trying to bridge some gaps. And this is exactly what you've touched on, Charleston. We can't have it where an individual goes to get the help that they need, and then is basically let out and said, "Okay, we've done all you can do, and you appear to be, that your things are fine, and good luck." Right? We need to do a better job of providing what we call wraparound supports to make sure that after, and it's very challenging, I think, for a person to be able to actually go out and seek that help in the first place, to make that's a huge step. And then when they successfully go through treatment, whether it's addictions or it's mental health, we need to recognize that doesn't mean that it's all cured and everything's fine and you can go back to resuming your life as it was before. And that's where, if there's some gaps in the programs and services, we need to do a better job of linking that. So when you've gone from step A, that you're not on your own trying to find where step B is and step C and go on and on and on. So I think that we've got to do a better job of that, making it easier for people to know where to start, to seek out mental health help. And it's not just government. There's other organizations that are in this field too. Canadian Mental Health Association, as an example. The FSIN, the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations, is doing some work. We partner with them on some initiatives, as well as groups like the Saskatoon Tribal Council, and making sure that we, and publicity is a big part of it too, making sure that people know where they can access help and how they can do that.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things here is that we're trying to be able to reach out to people or educate people. We've said that word a few times on the show, is educate, because I know for myself, growing up, it was always daunting to say that, you're having these thoughts or you're crazy, right? You always got kind of the stigma of, you don't want to be a wacko or a cuckoo or, crazy, right? But now it's not that. I think from my point of view, what I'm seeing is that there's a lot more people. You talk about Bell Awareness, which is a fantastic group where you're seeing people from all over that are talking about it, but also with the social media, I find that there's a lot more people that are coming out that you can see that say, hey, yeah, you know what? I was dealing with mental issues. I reached out to this group and I was able to get help, or I'm getting help. And it's okay to admit that just like you have when you have the flu or you do that, you go to see a doctor, right? It was the same thing here. Some people, it's not their fault. It's not their fault to be able to have these issues. So we need to be able to support these people up better. And here in Saskatchewan, that's great. How are you guys then leading the way with that? Or how are you guys looking to outside organizations or different places across the world that are that you're kind of following in their footsteps, or how is that happening?
Yeah, for sure. One thing that we try to do is, you don't try and reinvent the wheel if somebody's already done it, right? So you can save yourself a lot of time and effort, and frankly some money as well, if you can look at what other jurisdictions has done. And that can be other provinces, it can be states south of the border, it can be other countries across the globe. Just as an example of one of the things that we announced in this year's budget that we're going to be funding is something we call the Integrated Youth Services. And basically what that is going to be is the provincial government's going to, in a number of communities, partner with a community-based organization, a CBO, that will sort of serve as a backbone for these integrated youth services. And basically, it's a number of organizations working together, supported by this community-based organization, with aligned with this ministry, the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions, the Ministry of Education, because of course we have kids going to school. I'm sure Justice will be part of that as well, and corrections and policing and social services, of course. And that's a model that we've looked at from, I think it comes from, or at least one of them is from the province of British Columbia, where they've used something very, very similar to this. And so we've taken a look at that model, see how we can implement that here and provide supports for young people, teenagers, and young adults in Saskatchewan. And we're excited about it because it has the opportunity to provide kind of a one-stop shop for youth in these communities. And again, we're just getting in the process of kind of launching these, so we got a little bit of work to do before we get them off the ground. But I think it has huge potential. So that's an example of something that we've kind of copycatted from another province, and then tweak it a little bit to make it work in Saskatchewan. And kind of put our own sort of spin on it to make sure that it works in this province here. So yeah, we're always looking at best practices in other provinces and other jurisdictions around the world, and see where we can perhaps copy and paste a little bit and do some tweaks to make it a Saskatchewan-based experience.
Good for you. Yeah.
Is there any kind of places out there for like people who are going through, like adults who are going through mental health issues like that, where they have like I would say 100%, help on site with subsidized living?
Yeah, I'd have to check, Charleston. Like, I'm sure there are some organizations, probably depends on the community, right? There would be some of that, I think, available in our major centers in Regina and Saskatoon. That being said, I'm sure in some instances there's probably some demand built up, and there's some waiting lists for some of this stuff. And everybody's individual situation is unique that way, so it's tough to have sort of a cookie cutter approach to it. So what we often do is we'll say, when we're dealing with a client or someone that's looking for some supports, we make sure to try and pair them up with the right professionals and make sure that we look at their individual needs, because everybody's different that way, right? It might be an individual, a guy that's in his 20s and single, or it could be, a woman in her 40s who has a family and a full-time career, and so that's there's some different circumstances around that situation as opposed to the previous one. So and it's not just government as well. Like that's the interesting thing, is that what might work for me might not work for somebody else, and that's where we have some of these other organizations that I've mentioned, such as the CMHA and other groups like that to do some of these roles. Of course, churches. There's a number of churches and faith-based organizations and groups and that provide some outstanding work in these areas as well, and provide supports. I've talked to a colleague of mine, another MLA, who's spoken very highly of in his community, a small city of 5,000 people, where they have a men's group that started up with no government funding or intervention. This is just a group of fellows that got together and have started up a men's mental health group, and they get together, and that's been more challenging because of COVID, of course, but they found other ways to connect. But those are the types of stories we want to hear of and think, hey, that's a really great sort of a grassroots approach to this, and how can we implement that and use that in other areas of the province?
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
That's good.
And especially, I have a little bit of experience with that 811 number too, because a weird situation happened with me and one of my teammates before, and we went to an event. I can't remember where it was. I think it was in north of Saskatoon somewhere. And we coached a bunch of kids up in football, and we had like a positive effect, on a lot of the kids there. And then one of the kids sent a personal email to one of my teammates, and told him that he's having a real rough time at school, and he's having thoughts of, committing suicide, and having thoughts of, not belonging on this earth anymore, and wrote him a long message about this. And my teammate came to me, just telling me that, hey, man, I don't know what to do. I don't know, like, how do I respond? Like, do I tell his teacher? Do I tell his mom? Who do I call about this situation? And how do I respond back to him? And the only thing I could say was, man, 100% you kind of want to tell his parents and don't respond right away. But you got to tell this kid that, calm down, just be there for him as much as possible. Try to give him all the information that he needs. Try to dial this 811 number, inform them, send all the information to them so they can reach out and kind of get in contact with them. And we never really heard back about the situation, but I hope it did end in a positive, manner as far as that goes. But, just having that information there after looking online and seeing it, there is help
Yeah.
out there, and it is possible to be able to reach out to somebody when you need help.
And I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Is it's sorry to interrupt, but it's just the fact that there's now an outlet for people to start to be able to understand that they're not alone. We can start to be able to reach these kids, and like Everett, you said this previous. There is no cookie cutter for any of these answers for any of these situations. Every situation is going to be different. Right. So as long as we can start to be able to establish, which you guys are doing a great job of, as long as we can start to be able to establish that support and the knowledge for people to be able to take the first step, then we can work with them for the second step and the third step and how to be able to, overcome all these obstacles that these people are coming across. So one of the things that I wanted to jump into, because I know we don't have a lot of time, but it's funny, Everett, how, we go from one issue, mental health, and then to the other issue of addictions. How has the one affected the other? Because I'm assuming that you look at the drug overdoses here that are happening.
They're working hand in hand.
Yeah, unfortunately, is it a domino effect of now these people with their mental health issues? Are they turning towards alcohol? Are they turning towards drugs? And how are you guys looking to be able to? I know in Saskatoon, it opened up a few months ago, and I think in Regina there was the first location that opened up where now there's
a safe place.
Yeah, a safe house. But how are you guys now dealing with that issue of addictions and how that's coming across?
Yeah, you know what? You hit the nail on the head there, Johan, because more often than not, I think that the two are intertwined. Mental health and addictions issues. They usually go hand in hand, and that's the unfortunate part of it. And you have to remember that addictions can take many forms. It can be an alcohol addiction, it can be a drug addiction, it can be any number of things. And you think about how much life has changed for all of us in these past 14, 15 months because of COVID, and think of even just ourselves individually. To think of the things that the three of us would do during normal times to have a bit of an outlet, right? Whether it's go to a Rider game at Mosaic Stadium, or go to a concert and at the Lyric Theatre in Swift Current, or get together with a group of people, or do any number of things, and you don't have that outlet anymore. Mm-hmm. And all these sorts of things that you don't really think about it at the time, but all these little things that we normally do in our daily lives that are actually a mental health break for us, right? And little things that I'm sure we've all got them, things that we do for our own physical and mental well-being, whether it's, hitting the gym or taking the dog for a walk or whatever it happens to be, all things that serve as a bit of a break. And on the addiction side, it's just, and every province is seeing this, and it's a number of things. Number one, it's, we've had challenges with addictions before COVID. That's no surprise. Number two, it's gotten a lot worse because since COVID, because of the additional pressures that have been put on everyone, I think, and particularly for those that struggle with addictions, being able to, because they've had the treatment programs and services, they've had to adapt how they do things because of COVID protocols and all that sort of stuff. The other thing that's really concerning is that, and part of this has to do, I think, with the, again, COVID related, the closure of the international border has really, and this is what I've heard from law enforcement officials and those out in the field that have said that it's really impacted the drug supply and made it that much more deadly, because now you have a lot more drugs being manufactured and produced that are far more dangerous. You're seeing, more instances of fentanyl overdoses. Including here in my home community, Swift Current. This isn't just a big city issue anymore, and that's the thing. So we've upped the amount of money that we put in towards addictions treatments and supports. We've put more money into expanding the treatment beds at the Crystal Meth Treatment Facility in Estevan. We're putting more money into expanding the Take Home Naloxone program, which has seen a large uptake in terms of usage, even just in the last couple of years. But so we're going to greatly expand the naloxone program so that it's more available in more locations around this province. There's some other, we fund a number of harm reduction sites around Saskatchewan, 29 fixed harm reduction sites and 4 mobile sites. We're spending some money on what we're going to be calling community wellness buses. And to start with, they're going to be based out of some of our major major centers of Regina, Saskatoon, and Prince Albert, where we'll have a fully outfitted bus that will travel around different parts of the city with professionals on board. They'll have harm reduction supplies, but they'll have professionals on board that can help people and help clients try and navigate a pathway to treatments to try to break that cycle. We're looking at a number of different options there. We're looking at investigating the ability to do some drug checking, because that is part of the problem, is people that are struggling with addictions might be taking things they don't know what's in it, and sometimes until it's too late. And that's just some of the stuff that we're kind of dealing with. So, but again, trying to make sure that we spread this out as widely across the province as we can, because it's a province-wide issue, and it's one that has really gone up in a bad way in terms of what we've seen with addictions in the last 14 months.
Yeah, that's nuts, because it affects everybody too. And like, I haven't come across not one person that hasn't been affected by whether it's mental health or addictions, drug addictions, and makes it hard. It makes it hard on everybody, man. Especially to have to, because I deal with a lot of troubled youth when I'm coaching football, and I try to get sponsorships for troubled youth to come and, join in on the football camps that I have, to participate and stuff. And some of them go through hard times, even with the parents. Like recently, I just had to wait around with the kid for about an hour because his parents never showed up. So usually they sent a cab for him. The cab never showed up. So now I'm stuck with a kid that, he knows me as football Charleston, but technically I can't just pick you up, take you in my car and just drop you off somewhere, because then it looks a certain way. So I ended up having to wait until his parents came. And I mean, it's just the hard part of, how things are, stuff just works out and happens that way, but you just gotta be there for whoever you need to be there for whenever they need you.
This is it's such a heavy subject too. I think that this is the start of all of this. It's the start of being able to have a dialogue, right? I think, Everett, you talked about that before. Starting the conversation, and Belle's done a great job. There's all kinds of different groups, but we really appreciate you guys and what you're doing at the government for looking into this, because this is such a heavy subject, whether it's mental health, whether it's addictions, and everything else that has that domino effect coming after. So hopefully today we've been able to educate and entertain, but more so educate some people on the subject. And we really appreciate you coming on our show, Everett, because it does mean a lot. And like Charleston said, and like we've discussed, this can happen anywhere, whether it's in the Indigenous communities, whether it's in Swift Current, whether it's in Regina, whether it's Saskatoon, anywhere. This is happening to all of us. We're all being affected, and it has to be addressed. And we're very thankful for that government Saskatchewan is doing all that they can, and that
that would be awesome.
that you're doing your job, and you're doing it very well. So
it's a tough job, man. You got a lot on your plate, sir.
Yeah. And we cleared it up that Scott Moe does like you, apparently, that to put you in this position, that he must have liked you. You picked the right man for the job. So we really appreciate you coming on the show and helping hopefully all our viewers, anybody out there that has any issues, has any concerns, will know where to go. Anything that you wanted to add, then, Your Honor, for the last...
Any final words from Your Honor, Everett Hindley?
I should let Charleston kind of finish it up because it'll sound good that way. You know what?
I feel like we're in court.
We'll do an extra, right?
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to add or let our viewers know?
Yeah, just thank you so much, you guys, for first of all, for doing just a fantastic program. I've checked out a few of your videos, and you cover so many different aspects of life, and very well done. And thank you for the opportunity to highlight this for all of us today, whether we're government or not. And whenever we get an opportunity to talk about mental health and addictions issues, that's a win in my books, because we need to continue to talk about it. We need to try to find creative solutions and how we can help. And these aren't people that are strangers. It's friends, it's family, it's our neighbors, that each and every one of us that have these challenges from time to time. And I just kind of end with this. We talked a lot today about the supports that are out there for people to reach out to and connect to when they find themselves in some of these, you find yourself in dire straits on some days. And I think the other thing that's important, and I try to do this, and I don't do it enough, and I should, but I think that it's important for all of us, is to reach out to people. Don't wait for a signal. Don't wait for a red flag to go up. You never know how much it can mean to someone to just pick up a phone, shoot them a text, connect with them on Facebook, get together with them over coffee or something, just to connect, because you never know. You might just reach that person at that point in time, that very, very narrow window of opportunity where you might have caught them in a bad spot, and you have no idea how much that's helped them. So just to be a little proactive, each and every one of us, to check in on your friends and families, your neighbors, your buddies, and to see how they're doing. Check in and have a chat, and you never know what that can mean to them.
I like that. So going from your wise words, I'll throw it over to Charleston's for his parting wise words.
Always connect in with your friends, man. And you know what? I'm terrible at that too. Like I'm pretty horrible at just connecting in with your friends, because for some reason I just hate talking on the phone. I don't even know what it is, but I just hate talking on the phone.
Go do it, Charleston. Go do it. Send a message.
Yeah, you got to get better at sending messages to your friends and your buddies and your family, and reaching out and making sure everybody's okay, and just to say hi. But this is the Better with Age podcast. And the reason we call it the Better with Age podcast is because there's many things that get better with age. There's wine, there's whiskey, there's leather, there's cheese, there's mental health when you got help, when you got good old-fashioned help. And when you need to talk to somebody, because that will get better over time. But the most important thing of them all is friendship. So now that you've come on the Better with Age podcast, you are considered one of my friends. You are considered one of Johan's friends. We can't wait to have you back when this whole pandemic stuff is over. When, in like August sometime, when we're back to normal?
Oh, please. I hope sooner than that, my friend.
Yeah, I hope sooner than that too. So, hey, let's have some kind of a celebration where everything's better in the end. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, Everett. All the best to you. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, Honourable Everett.
All right. That never gets old. Love it.
Oh, and that's a wrap.
And that's a wrap.